السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم ملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا. قال الله تعالى في مقام آخر فأين تذهبون سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So as is our tradition, we'll begin. The first talk never deals with the topic. It's always a general community talk. So the first talk today will also be a general community talk, and then the subsequent talks will be about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it such that there are various blessings that exist within our lives, and there's various wisdoms that we benefit from. And sometimes we forget that wisdom lies both within the Islamic tradition and outside the Islamic tradition as well. So you'll find some benefit, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that you benefit from a Muslim. It could be from a Muslim or a non-Muslim alike. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned Hikmatul Dalatul Mu'min, that wisdom is the lost treasure of the believer. And wherever you find it, seize it. And so, I guess it'd be appropriate or befitting for me to tell you all Happy New Year. We just entered into the year 1434 in the Islamic calendar 2 days ago. We just finished the second day of Muharram. Tonight starts the third night, tomorrow will be the third day. And the reason why I begin with this is because one of the wisdoms in our community, in our general community of humanity in the West, is that you will see that people make New Year's resolutions. And if anyone is familiar with, the health industry, and within the health industry, if you're familiar with workout facilities, and facilities to help gain muscle mass and lose weight and make you a better all-around individual in terms of health, anytime there's a new year, there's a huge spike in enrollment or spike in membership. So, and you actually see this like on television, on the internet, there'll be advertisement after advertisement, and it'll call people to be able to join whatever workout club or facility that's present. And a lot of people join. Tons of people join. And then they have these deals. If you sign up for 3 months and you get a month of free or something, or first week trial is free, and then, sign up, etc. They have all these deals. And even like diet fads, they really begin to pick up pace right around the New Year. And the reason's simple. As human beings, we have a tendency to want to start afresh, to start anew. We see something in our lives, and we see something that we're doing wrong. And rather than fix it at the moment, we think to ourselves that when things end here, then I'll do better next time. So I'm a teacher. We just finished our first quarter a couple weeks ago. And when the quarter ends, especially when the semester ends, students always think, I'll do better now. I mean, they could have done better in the middle of the quarter, but for some reason they wait. The end has come. They feel that everything that's happened before, it's set, it's done. I can't leave it now. I can't do anything about it now. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to start afresh. I'm going to start anew. This happens with a lot of things. And so then they make a lot of sometimes wild and unreachable goals, unattainable goals. But then they begin to search and try to attain those goals. So people end the new year, and with the new year comes what? The end of the previous year, Thanksgiving, they eat and eat and eat. Then winter comes in, and then, it's final exams, so now they're eating while they're studying. The final exams come to an end, then they go home for winter break, then they eat. Then for those who celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, then they eat in those feasts and festivals there. Now they're eating, they see their weight go up 10 pounds. They're really disgusted themselves. They say, you know what, that's it. I'm going to change. And they enroll. And they're consistent. The first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they're in the gym night and day. 2 hours in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, whatever the case may be. They put their time out, they're there. If they say 3 days a week, they'll be there 3 days a week. They diet, they're sticking to it. I'm going to go on a juice diet. So they begin juicing. I'm going to go on the Atkins diet, and they skip out all the carbs. I'm going to go on the West Coast diet. I'm going to go on this diet. And they're very consistent. Then what happens? They hit their first hiccup, their first bump. So 3 weeks into January, one of their friends is getting married. So they think to themselves, you know what? I'll just eat this time. It's rude, after all, for me not to eat. So they go and they eat and they have a really good meal. And then they think, subhanAllah, eating sweets is sunnah. I don't know if that's sunnah. People always say it, right? And then they go have a big dessert, and then now they're very full. And then they say, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to do double workout. And they do the double workout. Then what happens a week and a half later, they get busy with work or school, so they skip their workout that day. Now, what happened that previous week after the wedding was they couldn't work out and they ate a lot. So it was an obstacle, it was a bump. It threw off the continuity. Then they got back on, but then another bump came. Now that second bump, even though they were busy, chances are they would have still worked out had they not broken the continuity earlier. Something in that first break caused them to be, it's always easier the second time around. The first time to leave a habit's hard. The second time it's easier, the third time it's very easy. Ask a student who studies. If they're studying, and they're studying very hard, then to go hang out with friends the first time, you want to do it, but you feel guilty. The second time you do it, it's a lot easier. And the third time it's much easier, etc. And you see, then they get derailed. By mid-February, they're derailed. Many people, they just, they had all these plans, these aspirations, and then they wait, okay, it's spring, I'm going to start anew. Then spring doesn't go too well, summer, I'm going to start anew. And then they have all these aspirations, the year comes to an end, they realize 365 days pass by, no change has occurred, but okay, this year I'll make a change. And Islam, and religiously, we're the same way. Religiously, we have the exact same ideas. When Ramadan comes, we have the motivation to be the next Shaykh of the deen. I'm going to pray Fajr every morning in the masjid, Isha in the masjid. I'm going to do this and this. I'm going to read this much Quran and memorize this hadith, etc. They have all this motivation. And what happens? They're on it initially. They'll be at the masjid regularly. But then what happens? They slip. And that first slip, it hurts a lot. Now, we just entered into the Islamic New Year, year 1434. And what's interesting about the Islamic New Year is that the Islamic New Year actually was not established at the time in which, so how do I put this? The Islamic New Year did not happen at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Although we date it back to the Hijrah, it did not happen in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. In the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, there was an Islamic calendar. In the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, because the empire had expanded so far, and there was so much, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so many requirements now to continue to keep up this empire, different legalities were dependent upon a calendar. So, for example, I borrow money from Abdul Wahab. And because I'm a poor teacher, and so I go to Abdul Wahab and I say, Abdul Wahab, if you let me borrow money, I promise I'll pay you back in Shawwal. He says, okay. Then Shawwal comes, I don't pay him back. So then he takes me to Umar radiallahu anhu. And then he says that, Sa'ad, he borrowed money from me. And here's the contract right here. And he said he'll pay me back in Shawwal. Because we're supposed to write contracts. We borrow money. إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِدَيْنِ إِلَى أَجْرٍ مُسَمَّى فَاكْتُبُوا. We're supposed to write it down. So then he comes to Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar radiallahu anhu say, well, it says Shawwal. And I'll say, yeah, but it was 10 Shawwals from now, not next Shawwal. There's no way of dating it. And this became a big issue for the Muslims. So Umar radiallahu anhu said, we have to have a calendar. So then some of the Sahaba, they began to discuss, when will the calendar begin? So some said, we'll begin at the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. But this deen doesn't go by personalities. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ رُسُولٌ أَفَإِمَّا تَوْقِتِلٌ قَلَتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ. that the Prophet ﷺ is only a messenger. Messengers came from before him. If he dies or if he's killed, will you turn back on your heels? وَمَن يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَن يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. Whoever does this, they never harm Allah. Not in the smallest bit. Some other Sahaba said, we'll do it from the beginning of the Wahy. And the idea after idea came up, we'll do it with the Hijrah. With the establishment of the Hijrah, with the migration to Medina. The Sahaba liked that idea. Umar radiallahu anhu, he loved that idea. That with this migration, why? Because the migration was the turning point for the believers from which they went as a minority faith to an actual political power, a state, an established religion. A state-established religion. But furthermore, you see within the Hijrah that this became the time when the Muslims put forth such an effort and they made such a sacrifice that sacrifice was accepted so many times over, and Allah Ta'ala took a small group of individuals and made them expand to be one of the most powerful empires this world has ever seen in such a short period of time. Now this is what we mark our New Year by. We don't say Happy New Year and then we're thinking about a mythological god or figure. We don't say Happy New Year, we're thinking about the birth of an individual. We're thinking Happy New Year, and we don't necessarily say that, but Happy New Year, that it's a reminder. This is the point in which we set how the Muslims made a sacrifice and made an effort to become a dominating power within the world. And not dominating to be oppressive. Dominating to be influential and beneficial for people. And we also have that same opportunity. That with this new year, we should take this idea of making a New Year's resolution. What is my New Year's resolution? From now to the next monthly meeting, from now to the next Ramadan, from now to the next Muharram, what is my resolution? And it doesn't have to be a lot. It does not have to be a lot. It could be a small promise. I promise I'm going to come to the masjid once a week. Or I'll give $1 a month. Or whatever the decision is. But remember, the people, it's not that people don't attain their New Year's resolution because the resolution was too small. No, the resolution's grand. I'm going to make $1 million this year. I'm going to go and get married this year. I'm going to buy a house this year. I'm going to do this and that and that. It's not the size of the resolution that causes it to fall. It's the consistency. And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. The most beloved action, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ, are the ones that are consistent. And they don't have to be grand. وَإِنْ قَلَّ, even if they're small. So we should look and see, what can I make in my life as a change? Because we look with a very narrow perspective. And I say we because myself first and foremost. We think if I don't make 10 changes this year, it was a year of failure. So what do we say? I want to do 10 things this year. We try to leave 10 sins. And we do it for the first month. The second, third month we fall down. And we fall down so hard we add an 11th sin. Much better to say I'm giving up one sin this year and leave it completely for 12 months, and next year tackle the next one, next year tackle the next one. 30 years later we tackled 30 different problems in our lives, or added 30 new things to our lives. So someone might say, where are you getting this from? Actually, if you take the Hijrah, you get it directly from Hadith. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the Hadith that classifies various terms, the Mujahid, etc. He says, wal muhajir, and the one who does Hijrah. Who's the one who does Hijrah? The one who gives up the entire life and goes lives in a cave? The one who says salam to his family and goes overseas? The one who gives up his entire schooling and then goes sits in a corner? No, that's not the muhajir. Al-muhajiru, the one who does Hijrah, man hajara, the one who leaves min al-khataya, wa-dhunub, from their sins. That's the issue. People have this misconception, if I want to be a good Muslim, I have to become the next Shaykh of Azhar University. That's not, who said that? If Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was here today, I can guarantee you most of you know more surahs than he did. But he was better than us. Because deen is not based off information. Deen is not even based on knowledge. Deen is based on acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that happens a million different ways. Some Sahaba were mujahideen, some were ulama, and some were businessmen, and some were teachers, and some were, some were workers. They were workers in the field. But yet they were all people whom Allah loved because it wasn't about the position of looking religious. It was about the position of being religious. It's two completely different things. Anyone could tie a turban. If I bought you turbans, you could all tie turbans. You can buy the biggest turban in the world. Tie all of our turbans together like my Shaykh would say and just tie. Huge turban. It doesn't make anyone more religious. It doesn't. You're wearing an NIU sweatshirt right now. I wore one at home. Why, did I not wear one here today because I don't want to look religious? No, it just became dirty. I wore it too much. You know, I was so excited they beat Toledo. I'm wearing it and I spilled something and now I gotta wash it. That's just, it makes no one more or less religious. The garment that they wear per se. Or the profession they go in per se. Or the words they speak. You know, people come and they say, Assalamu alaikum, brother, and all the chukka salam. And you know, that doesn't make a person more religious. You can tilt your head as much as you want and speak in the softest way. It doesn't make a person more religious. Religiousness comes in an understanding of our position in this world. And our position is that we're subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now in hadith, it's been stated very clearly that Allah ta'ala made the world in our service. The dunya for our service. And He made us to serve Him. Thus the dunya is the means for us. It's a means for us. You know, one of the biggest diseases of the heart is called hubb al-dunya, love of the dunya. So people often say, well, how is that so? So is it haram for me to want the world? No, it's not. Mawlana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah, he mentioned something very interesting. He said, the way a person is in the waters, when they're sailing in a boat, if they're sailing in a boat, if water comes into their boat, they're destroyed. But they have to have water around them. You can't just put a boat in the middle of Annie Glen Road and say, I'm going to start rowing. We're not going to go anywhere. I don't care what size biceps you are. We're not going anywhere whatsoever. You have to go to Kishwaukee River, right? We have to go somewhere where there's a body of water. So the water becomes a necessity. It's basically a friend of the boat. But the water can't go in the boat, because then the boat will drown. Same thing, we have to live in this world. Tell me one example the Prophet ﷺ said, you know what, I'm cutting my life off, I'm going to go live in a cave. He visited a cave. He never lived in a cave. He took time away from the community to reflect. He didn't leave the community completely. Because we're supposed to exist within the dunya. But the love of the dunya is not supposed to enter into our heart. Now what's dunya? People say, okay, well what's dunya? Dunya, the ulama say in the very easiest description, is anything that causes a person to distance himself or to cause him to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what dunya is. Dunya is not, you know, if dunya is everything in this world, then this masjid's dunya. But dunya, that's not what dunya is. Dunya is that which causes a person to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, money was not dunya. He was a wealthy merchant. And he was a person who set people free. And that wasn't dunya for him. Because that was a key for him to grow closer to Allah ta'ala. سَيْجَنَّبُهَا الْأَتْقَى الَّذِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى وَمَا لِأَحَدٍ عِنْدَهُ مِنْ نِعْمَةٍ تُجْزَى إِلَّا بِابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that al-atqa. What's atqa mean? The most pious individual. الَّتِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى. He gave his wealth for the sake of Allah ta'ala. Now look at this person. Atqa refers to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. What is the Prophet? What does Allah ta'ala say in the end of this verse? وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. We will definitely make you happy later. We will definitely please you. We will definitely make sure that you are content. Why? Because he didn't go lock himself up. And this is a mistake that people make. And this is a mistake I've told you guys 100 times. What's the first few mistakes? And you can repeat it for me. Person becomes righteous, what's the first thing he abandons? School. I have to be righteous, I'm going to go fail. Where is that? You know, I'm finishing my master's, alhamdulillah. I have a 3.97 GPA. It's a very good GPA. I'm not boasting, I'm just telling you what it is. My teacher's upset with me. Because I got an A- in one of my classes. Because in DeKalb, if you have a 97%, it's a 96 is an A-, 97 is an A. He's like, you can't be content with less than perfection. That's the nature of this dunya. That if you want to live in it, Allah Ta'ala says, well, ahsinu, be perfect. Inna Allah yuhibbul muhsinin. That Allah loves those who strive for perfection. Does that mean only be perfect in the way you do ruku', the way you do sujood, and the way you give charity? Because if that's the case, then we don't follow the same Prophet. Because the Prophet ﷺ was perfect in every way. Remember last month's discussion? Why did Khadija radiallahu anha initially become aware of the Prophet ﷺ? Why? Because he brought back her a huge financial return. The profit was huge. The profit, not P-H-E-T. The profit, the financial return that he brought back was huge. And she said, wait a minute, how did this happen? She went to her servant, Masira, tell me about him. And Masira said, this is an amazing man. Now the Prophet said, why did Allah Ta'ala make him a merchant? Why not just make him a prophet right away? Because he had to be with the world. And when he was with the world, what happens? Everyone sees this is the most honest person I've ever met. The most trustworthy person I've ever met. As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. He didn't get those terms, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by being a prophet. He got them before prophethood. So when he entered into prophethood, what happens? Everyone knows that this is the man who speaks the truth. Even if I don't follow him, I know he's not lying. Abu Jahl knew he wasn't lying. Abu Jahl, it's asked of him. Abu Sufyan knew he wasn't lying. He later became Muslim, Abu Jahl didn't, but they knew he wasn't lying because they knew this man's not a liar. So this is our time to begin to realize that many of the things that we've done, we've mistakenly done in the guise of religion. We have to be honest with ourselves. I meet a lot of students, I'm a high school teacher, who want to improve themselves religiously. And what do they think? I have to, first things first, I have to do bad in school, poorly in school. Secondly, I have to try dressing like a poor man. That's the first two things that always happen. You find me someone become religious, that's exactly what's happening at home. That the first thing happens is what? They start doing poorly in school. Second, they become a poor person. I had a student whose father came, he didn't actually give it to me. He came to my parent-teacher conferences last week. And he was there ready to give it to me. I'm an English teacher, but I teach one Islamic studies course because they needed one course to be taught. So I teach fiqh. So his father was there. He was ready to give it to me. So we went over the child's grade. The child had 93%, did well in my class. And then he's like, the father said anything else because he was waiting to tell me. I found this out later from him. So I'm like, yeah, there's one more thing. He's like, what? I'm like, your child's too extreme. And you just see his facial expression change. Like, what? I'm like, your child needs to practice deen in moderation. That was the comment. In comment report cards, they'll say, like, good job, good student. His comment was, your child needs to be more moderate. And so the father's like, what are you talking about? Look at this report card. I'm like, your child is too busy making a 20-minute wudu. His child he's compulsive in his wudu, obsessive compulsive. So he'll do wudu, he'll say, I didn't get it properly, and he'll go back to the sink and start over. No, your child needs to be moderate in religion. And the relief shone in his face. And he told me later, I came to talk to you in particular. I thought you were making my child like this. I'm going to make your child like anything. I'm an English teacher. If I make him like Shakespeare, you can blame me. If he's walking around in tights, that's my fault, right? But this is not my issue. But he came, why? Because they always make that mistake. Where does our deen practice extremism? Except for love. We're extreme in love. We love Allah. We're extreme in love. No one's going to doubt that. But that's the nature of love. You fall in love, it's an extreme emotion. No one says, I fell in like. No one says that. Because the term to fall is extreme measure. No one walks in love. They fall in love. It's an extreme measure. And then you hit and you're like, what just happened? Who is this person who's changed my life? Whatever the case may be. It's an idea of falling in love. That's the nature of love. It's the nature of love. So anyway, this is our time. This is the new year. We have to begin to make some resolutions. And they have to be practical. If I'm a person where I work, then I can't, and I work in an Islamic school, so the message is at my fingertips. I still can't make a practical resolution that I'll pray the message 5 times a day. It's impossible. Because with the time changing, there's hours I drive, I have to pull over. And I have to pray sometimes when I get home, I have to pray at a rest area. That's just the nature of my work. I can't always do that. So I have to make a practical resolution. Then my resolution will be, this year I'm going to get consistent masjid for Fajr. Because I have to be at Fajr at work that early. And I'll try to be consistent at Isha. Sometimes I'm there that late, so I'll try that. One resolution. Second resolution, I'll try to take my regular paycheck and divide it up to component parts. This is for my family, this is for my savings, this is for this is that, and I'll make a component part for donation. And no matter what, I won't give that up. Or I might make a resolution that this year, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a better person to my wife, or to my husband, or to my children, or to my parents, or to my aunts and uncles. One resolution I made this year is to visit my aunts and uncles more. I don't visit them enough. It's a resolution I made. And may Allah give us all tawfiq to do that. But these are small things. So people say, well, this is, Brother Sa'ad, make some good resolutions. when we get to the first seerah chapter, you'll see exactly why these resolutions are the best resolutions. It's not to memorize the whole Quran in a year. Inshallah, you can do that. Inshallah, you can do that. May Allah give you all tawfiq. May Allah give me tawfiq. But you'll see when we get into the first discussion today about the seerah, why these types of resolutions, that I'm going to be better to my family, that I'm going to go and help the poor, etc., why they're the best resolutions. And so I'll stop right here. So I didn't want to make this first talk too long anyway. The community talks will be shorter. But this, so we'll take, how long is the break?
I think it's 10 minutes.
10 minutes. So we'll take a 10-minute break. I don't know if there's chai and stuff. That's the next break, right?
Yeah.
That's the second break. Sorry. When you get a little tired, then we get the chai going, the tea going.
If
So
brings it.
if Imam brings it. So 10-minute break. Then inshallah, if you haven't prayed Isha, that's the one thing I want to mention here. This used to be a qiyam program, and I realized that just due to timing, it's not that easy. So it doesn't mean that you can't have a qiyam. What this should mean is, again, be practical. So we have 10-minute breaks. When the break begins, spend 5 minutes, pray 2 rak'ah nafil. And then go downstairs for 5 minutes and hang out. Then come back for the talk. The next break begins, 15-minute break. Spend 5 minutes and pray 2 rak'ah nafil. You can make because you've already prayed your witr already. So make the intention of qiyam. And then go downstairs and hang out for 10 minutes, drink the chai, come back upstairs. And then before we leave, when it all ends, because we no longer spend the whole night here, then pray 4, 6 rak'ah, then go home, and then go to sleep. And wake up for Fajr. No, people stay up all night, not calling anyone out here, but people stay up all night in Qiyam, they fall asleep half hour before Fajr, they miss all Fajr. Where's the benefit? The important thing was left behind, the small thing was elevated. That's not how our deen works. Our deen is practical. I'm not calling anyone out here, I promise. So anyway, we ask Allah Ta'ala to give us tawfiq to make amongst those who make resolutions and we follow through with our resolutions. And we ask Allah Ta'ala to give us tawfiq to make amongst those who make practical resolutions and we stick to our resolutions, and then we are able to grow closer to Allah through those small steps through our resolutions. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.